Hello. Today I will be featuring an upcoming Tier 8 USS Premium, which is the Kid, a new destroyer. Now, first of all, I want to highlight this is a work in progress, so both gameplay and stats is not necessarily final. It can still change a large amount, as we saw with the Hood, who changed multiple times during my commentaries. Anyway, the Kid, at first glance, it basically seems like they took the Fletcher hull and they removed half the torpedoes and they made the remaining half Benson torps, and it's a Tier 8. In fact, at first glance, I really had issues seeing what it was supposed to bring to the table, because, well, it handles pretty much the same as the Benson. It has a 4-second rudder versus Benson's 3.9, or was it the other way around? But the Benson has a tighter turning circle at 570, whereas this one has a 620 meter turning circle. Still, it handles really well. It handles like a US DD. It's got the Fletcher gun power of 5 guns, which is great. And it's fast, 38 knots without a flag. With a flag you can do 39.9. So I mean, it's got the basic US DD gunboat characteristics. The issue is, of course, that it has only 1 X5 torps, and they are Benson torps, meaning, well, they deal 16k damage each, or is it 16.6? But they are slow. They only have 9.2 km range, and the reload is like 2 minutes. So overall, it didn't really seem that impressive, and I had a hard time really seeing what its role is supposed to be. However, then I took a look at the defensive AA rating of this ship, and it was surprisingly high. In fact, the fact that it can also slot defensive AA naturally helped this significantly, because the Benson needs to, if you use the Sea hull, you can use defensive AA on the Benson as well, but you need to give up a turret. That does not happen for the Kid. And the values on the defensive AA are actually surprisingly good. So obviously that led to some experimentation, and I started changing my build. At first I was using my basic gearing build, but now I've changed to a build where I have basic firing training, advanced firing training, and manual AA, and of course concealment expert. And suddenly the AA really started kicking in. In fact, in the gameplay you see right now, I'm against a Lexington, and you can see when I pop defensive AA, the planes just start dropping out of the sky. And I've been testing it a lot in these real-world situations by queuing up with various carrier players and basically seeing how it performs, how it handles. I think for random battles, the impact this will have will not be that large, unless of course you division with a carrier. I think if division with a carrier, this premium is quite nice, but if you're just solo queuing and you end up not having a carrier opponent, well, then the build is kind of pointless. But the problem is I don't really see any other build that makes the Kid really stand out. In fact, if it wasn't for the plane shooting capabilities, there is very little reason to bring it over a Benson. Well, yes, you have slightly more gun power than a Benson because of your guns, but I mean, if he runs the B hull, then you're pretty much equal, and he has more torps. He has twice as many torps, which naturally means he'll be able to deal a lot more damage. You have slightly more HP with the HP perk. As you can see, Benson only reaches 18.2, but the difference is very small. However, this pure AA build is something that obviously has some serious value, I think, especially for competitive gameplay. I mean, here I'm not running defensive AA, these are Lexington torpedo planes, and I'm just focus firing them. And you can see, even without defensive AA, these planes are being shredded, and he has to instantly drop before they get shot down, but even after he drops, they have a hard time getting away, and the planes are just getting shredded. Another thing that's of course important is that the ship is very stealthy at 5.8 concealment. In fact, you are only spotted by planes at 5.3 kilometers, and this is with defensive AA active. That means that between 7.2 and 5.3 you can shoot down planes from stealth, which previously was kind of the Akizuki's strength, but you are even better at it. So that is, this role of the Akizuki is something I see this ship replacing. Now, I don't mean the role that I use the Akizuki for in random battles, but I mean in competitive. And competitive, the Akizuki is often used as an AA ship. You use it to secure certain objectives, certain central points where cruisers can't push, but the DD can push, and you use it to gain air control in those areas. And the Kid seems like a ship that could easily replace the Akizuki in this function. In fact, naturally I was interested in seeing how the ship would perform against the bots with this full build. So let's jump straight into a training room battle where I can demonstrate just how powerful the ship is against Shokaku planes, which you are more likely to see in competitive games. Alright, I decided since I'm against bots, I better add a few extra. So we're against 4 Shokaku bots here. And as you can see, even with manual AA, focus firing these planes, it's kind of sketchy how many planes you shoot down. I think the long range aura isn't quite as powerful as the Akizuki's long range aura. However, this of course all changes when you pop defensive AA. And suddenly you can see just how good you are at shredding these planes. And I've started comparing this to the Akizuki very much because they kind of fulfill the same type of role, being an anti-air DD at tier 8, especially for competitive. Most importantly, the Akizuki is very slow. Even with the speed flag, you'll only reach 34.6, and your turning circle is something like 730. In comparison, this ship is more than 5 knots faster, and the turning circle is more than 100 meters smaller. So dodging torps and in general dodging stuff like this is much easier, you're quicker, you don't get caught as easily as the Akizuki. So you have all these strengths favoring you. Of course, thanks to defensive AA as well, you can see bombs, just left click bombs, can hit quite hard. But defensive AA, of course, spread these out, which is especially important against Shokaku. Your guns, I mean, the competitive Akizuki doesn't run IFHE, so it kind of struggles against angled stuff, because, well, the HE does so little damage, whereas that's, of course, once more not an issue for the Kid. So I would expect to see, well, the Kid does seem to match up very well against Akizuki for a competitive setting. How much it will actually impact random battles, it remains to be seen. I don't really see the ship being that big of an impact on random battles. I mean, every now and then there will probably be some people who queue up with a carrier, but in general, from the point of view of any other player except the carrier player, facing a Kid really isn't that big of a deal. It's kind of like facing a B-hull Benson, really. So it's not going to impact the balance in that way that much. But it does probably bring up an old question that many IGN DD players have often requested that Akizuki receives defensive AA. And the response was that it's too powerful. And I can't help but frown and wonder a bit at that, considering well, they gave it to the Kid quite happily, which is a bit questionable. However, how much Kid will see in competitive remains to be seen, because usually there are limits that you can only bring 2 US DDs. So if someone wants to replace the Akizuki with a Kid for competitive, that means that they must also replace a Benson. Okay, this requires some footwork, and this kind of dodging, you would never be able to do that in an Akizuki. It's too big, it's too clumsy, it doesn't handle nearly as well, whereas the Benson you can pull off these ridiculous maneuvers in. So it does feel a lot more comfortable in a setting like this. As for the build that I'm using, well, as I said, very similar to, well, what would be a competitive Akizuki build. So, I mean, starting off, the hood looks, of course, very similar to the US DDs, but starting off we have the AA range, and captain perks wise we naturally have preventive maintenance, followed by last stand, followed by basic firing training, and then we have, well, concealment, and of course AFT and manual AA. This is pretty much the basic Akizuki competitive build, and running the exact same thing on the Kid does seem to be very strong, and it just feels better. It feels more fun to play than the Akizuki does feel in that setting. Now, if we put the flag on, you can see the values of the anti-air, 7.2 km range, and the DPS values as well. These, of course, get greatly enhanced by the defensive AA. Without the defensive AA, the Akizuki would clearly be superior still, thanks to the strong long-range aura. But with defensive AA, I don't really see the Akizuki quite competing in plane shredding capability. So, very strong. And I mean, even though I don't feel it'll have that much impact on random battles, I have had some really nice games in this ship. but most of them, or pretty much all of the really nice games, have featured queuing up with a CV body. And you kind of rely on RNG in the hopes that you will get carriers against you when you queue up in this thing. Kind of in the Grosso way, if you went full AA build in the Grosso way, it's kind of the same thing. It seems very much like a one-trick pony at the moment. Well, it's AA Benson with half the torps, and that's pretty much it. I can't say I'm really that impressed. The competitive niche, it might find it. It might have that competitive niche where it replaces the Akizuki on certain maps or situations. But in terms of the average player, is there any reason to get this? And I can't really say that there is. I mean, if ranked is tier 8 and there's a lot of carriers, sure, this ship might be quite nice, but then again, it won't be that much nicer than a B like Sea-Hull Benson. And honestly, it's a pretty boring premium. That's pretty much my opinion on it. The Degrasse, on the other hand, I thought was a lot more fun, and I'll feature that one soon. But my initial impressions on the Kid is, well, it's not weak, but it's kind of meh. Anyway, that was all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.